could have won. We had the hiccups in the game, but we still got to keep fighting through it. You know, that team, it looked like that team wanted it more than us. You know, they was playing physical. When we went up, I feel like, you know, we just took our foot off the gas, but we just got to keep it going, finish teams.
Nick, thank you. I'm good. I feel good. Now I can ask you, now that you set the whole thing up for me. Yeah, I appreciate it. I got to ask about your faith now in Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, because for the last couple of weeks it has been going downhill, at least in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Ravens got to figure out who they want to be on offense and who they can be. Now, we talk about how important offensive line play is, and then we ignore it when an all-pro goes out for the year. The loss of Ronnie Stanley has clearly affected them and their offense, and they were without their two best defensive tackles yesterday, and you saw that particularly late in the game with Derrick Henry running all over him in the fourth quarter and overtime. But Brandon, Lamar last year was a dynamic, terrifying weapon. And this year he hasn't been. Last year, Lamar Jackson on the season had 9 games with at least 210 passing yards. This year it's at 2. Last year on the season, he had 12 games with at least 60 rushing yards. This year it's at 3. Last year on the season, he had 9 games with at least 3 touchdowns. This year he's done it twice. So I'm not putting it all on Lamar. I think there's other structural reasons the Ravens are struggling, but they are not the same offense. And he is clearly, up to this point of the season, nowhere close to the same quarterback that was a unanimous league MVP. And I don't know how they fix it, Brandon.
So, Nick, remember we had this discussion, week 3, week 4? Lamar didn't play well, and we were talking about, can this guy throw? Is he capable of being a starting quarterback in the National Football League? Everybody's talking about Lamar, and the first person that I stood on the table and talked about was Greg Roman. I said this is a Greg Roman issue because there's no chemistry, there's no continuity. It's almost like their offense is disjointed. You know, you cannot be this pistol offense, misdirection offense, quarterback runs, and then in the passing game, what you saw yesterday, go and spread and drop back. It makes no sense. Nick, everything that you just said reminds me a lot of Cap in San Francisco. Every year, his passer rating just got lower and lower and lower and lower. Why is that? Is it Cap?
Oh, wow.
Or was it the league figuring out the running quarterback style that Greg Roman throws at you, and it takes off so fast, but then once you get hit to it, then it's like, we know how to stop this. And I think that's I know that's exactly what's happening in Baltimore. Everybody in the National Football League knows how to stop it. So what made them explosive in the passing game last year, the play action, no longer exists because teams know how to stop the run. So what they need to do, I said this Friday, they need to find someone, a passing game coordinator or a new offensive coordinator can come in and help develop Lamar Jackson in this offense. And I wouldn't even say develop Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, he can play ball. So you need an offense that fit. Coming into the NFL, a lot of question marks around Lamar, rightfully so. He answered that. He's proved to you that he can be a quarterback. High football IQ, very savvy, poise in the pocket, poise on the sideline, leadership skills out of this world. So now what you need to do to take the team to a whole nother level is find a passing game that makes sense, that mimics the running game. Wilds, that is the answer. We can talk about Lamar all we want, but until Greg Roman looks himself in the mirror and change what he's doing on first down and in the passing game and in 2-minute situations, then this team will never contend.
Well, so the Greg Roman stuff I find super interesting. And obviously, Lamar has answered all the questions about, is he a quarterback? Is he a starting quarterback? Those now look as laughable as they did when people were floating them during the draft. But there are now new questions, which is, are we going to look back on year 2 of his career as the aberration? Or are we going to look back on this 10-game stretch of struggling as the aberration? And Wilds, that is yet to be seen. That is what we have to figure out over the next 6 weeks of football and into the playoffs. Now, they play the Steelers on Thanksgiving. Then they have an incredibly soft schedule the final 5 weeks of the year. So I'm not worried they're not going to make the playoffs. But the standard for the Ravens is not make the playoffs. They set their own standard too high with what they did last year and, honestly, what they've done with that franchise the last 20 years, Wilds.
Yeah, they still feel like a scary team if they get into the playoffs. But it feels like they can get bullied a little bit. Lamar said they felt like the Titans wanted it more. And Brandon, to me, my favorite part of the game was this pregame scrum, which felt like something out of like college football, line up on the Ravens logo. And here comes Jim Harbaugh getting into it. After the game, they said there's no big deal. There was a handshake, but it was kind of an awkward moment. Brandon, do you think that Vrabel sort of set the tone right away with this?
This is genius coaching in my eyes. Now look, I'm not in that locker room. I wasn't in those meetings. I don't know I'm not in Coach Vrabel's head. So I don't know the why behind it. But all I know is the Titans was a struggling team. The same way we're talking about the Baltimore Ravens today, and we'll be talking about them all week until they handle their business against the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they handle their business against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a team that's been struggling. And an easy way to get your team out of the ditch is throw them in a fight. So before the game, this could be a tactic. This could have been a genius move by Vrabel saying, you know what, I want you guys to break it down on their logo on the 50-yard line before the game even starts. So I think this is more Vrabel trying to get his team going and using anything he can. And it was less about the Ravens and their logo, because obviously there's a lot of respect between the two. And I think that's why Coach Harbaugh walked out there, because you don't see this in the National Football League. We talked about Juju celebrating on the star a couple weeks ago. We know as players, one of the most disrespectful things you can do is do anything on their logo. So I think this was genius by Harbaugh to go get the win. And obviously, you know, Vrabel and Harbaugh, you know, he took offense to it, rightfully so.
I also think, Wilds, I'm glad you pointed it out, I also think it's indicative that the league's not scared of Baltimore the way they were last year. Nobody's doing this when they were 14-2, big truss, whooping everybody. We mentioned the logo. When T.O. did it to the Cowboys, guess what that Cowboys team didn't have? Emmett, Troy, Irvin, Prime. It wasn't a very good team. This year, when Juju tried to do it to the Cowboys stink. Now, the Ravens obviously don't stink. I'm not arguing that. But I do think there was an intimidation level and a toughness level that was associated with Baltimore last year, where they really did intimidate people. Now, the Titans weren't intimidated in the playoff game. Go ahead, Brandon.
But Nick, you said it earlier. It's easy to play the big bad wolf and the big bully when you're missing two of your offensive linemen that got you to where you were last year, and then obviously your two defensive linemen that sets the tempo for toughness on your team. You know, their two defensive linemen, star defensive linemen, weren't in this game, so it's easy to do that. Then if these teams see each other again, and I'm not sure if they will, because it's whoever gets into the playoffs at this point, but